Welcome to The Difference Engine, the show for tech founders, investors, and innovators.
What are we talking about today?
Well, today we're looking at the topic everyone is talking about and few seem to be able to grasp, the impact of AI.
Yeah, and we're going to channel Steve Jobs and hopefully, forgive the English here, have you think different as we look at some historical context to ask, what can vacuum cleaners teach us about the use of AI?
Also, some up-to-the-minute AI marketing advice, which we have allegedly co-created with the mighty analysts at Gartner. You may be surprised at how much we agree with them.
For once. But first, we attempt to chart a course through the SaaS apocalypse, which many see as AI's first legacy.
We've mentioned before, in the US, that venture capital has seen its allocation shift somewhat. If you look at premier firms like Sequoia Capital and Andreessen Horowitz, for instance, their portfolios are increasingly dominated by AI investments. It feels like the classic SaaS playbook is losing momentum.
Yeah, SaaS has obviously defined the last 2 decades in tech. Companies serving different types of applications like Salesforce early on, and then Slack and part of Salesforce now, and Shopify have built entire categories around cloud-delivered software. But those markets are now maturing, and most new SaaS startups are only incremental improvements within the existing categories rather than category-defining breakthroughs.
Yeah, exactly. The 2010s, if you can remember that far back, were dominated by SaaS category creation. I mean, if you could define the category, you could dominate it, identify a problem, build a strategy and narrative before building the actual product.
Yeah, the problem with AI is very different. And to date, all the AI winners that we've seen, the early AI winners, if you will, appear to be inherently horizontal. When companies like OpenAI or Anthropic release systems such as Claude or ChatGPT, or even new model capabilities like Claude Work, the impact is immediate, but it's also across multiple software categories: customer support, coding tools, marketing platforms, knowledge management, you name it. To me, that's the issue that's causing the slide in these highly specialized vertical SaaS valuations.
Why should we care? I mean, clearly a whole lot of value disappearing out of the market is an issue. But from our perspective, all this makes category ownership much harder. If your startup is built on top of OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google DeepMind, the underlying intelligence layer is controlled by somebody else. Now, that, of course, limits how defensible your category really is. It's, looking back, it's like the early days in PC software. A whole load of application providers appeared, but they were building to PC-DOS or later to the Windows operating system, which was ultimately controlled by, guess who? Microsoft, the Redmond giants. Now, Redmond was quite happy that third parties built applications that encouraged more people to buy copies of the operating system, cash cow. But that was until the revenue stream slowed on the operating system. And then Microsoft, of course, did what anybody would do. It slowly but surely bundled all the third-party app suppliers right out of existence.
Yeah, and of course, this has been noticed by our friends in the VC and private equity world. And if they've started adjusting how they evaluate startups, which, of course, as a reminder, mostly are valued on future earnings and not what they're doing today. So if those future earnings start to look even a little bit foreshadowed, they have an issue. During the SaaS boom, which they enjoyed for probably a decade or so, the sort of questions you ask yourself was, can this company dominate X SaaS category? Now the question is more like, what proprietary advantage, that they also say competitive moat, does this company have? Is it data? Is it distribution? Is it their models? Or as we found out from the dinner we hosted this week, is it their brand? And I'd also add that there may have been room back in the day for 5 or 6 players in this exactly the same category, which made fast following a very valid strategy. You didn't have to be the absolute dominant. There's plenty of money fighting for the crumbs from the table. But now, unless there's genuine differentiation, life has become much, much harder.
And as you mentioned moats, the reality is the nature of moats has changed too. if you think about it, SaaS companies relied on workflow lock-in, combined with amazing sales teams. We've had some of that experience on this pod in the past, and of course, those amazing networking events, which we all remember with great fondness, by the way, if we could remember them. And there was also the cost of switching, which was often very high. But of course, what people did as they were building those companies was ensure that there was integration into ready-made ecosystems. Now, AI companies are different. They rely on different things. They rely on training data, the availability of compute and memory access, and model context, and/or quality.
We're generalizing a little bit here for this, talking about AI companies, but one thing we've noticed is the speed of category formation is a step change. So a SaaS category could take years, potentially decades, a decade or so to emerge. And from an investor point of view, this is lovely. This meant many years of compounding growth and optionality on when they could exit. They could ride something that was still growing in year 2, year 3, use secondary share sales, which the public never got a sniff of, to return their funds to their shareholders, etc. They had time on their sides. But AI categories appear and saturate in months or even weeks. Let's look at AI coding assistants, GitHub, Copilot, now ironically owned also by Microsoft, which was a snip at over $7.5 billion. That practically redefined the category overnight. But there's new players that, now we've got Lovable, we've got Replit, we've got Codex, we've got OpenClaw, and the whole vibe coding revolution has sped everything up.
We've noticed that this sort of disruption leads ultimately to what we term category inflation. If you think about it, if you're living in IT every day at the moment, every new startup now describes itself as an AI platform. And we know the reality is many of them are just thin wrappers on top of foundation models. The sort of thing we've seen before has been paradigmatic shift in enabling technologies in IT. When I wade around in the world of tech M&A during most days, I've noticed that this leads to a curious M&A challenge, particularly in Europe, where individuals believe they can, out of the blue, create technologies that transform the SaaS experience. They believe that their consulting value-add channel will result in others paying huge sums for their apparently game-changing IP, which, of course, they've created in just a matter of weeks. Sorry, Europeans, no. Stuff like that might occur as an outlier in Silicon Valley, where there are layers of relationships and previous connections behind that decision to buy rather than to build. Anyway, lots of this happening, but I digress. Let's go back to that wrapper problem.
Exactly. So we're focused on European category creation, and we recently spoke to a company in the coding space, mentioned vibe coding and what it would do to their market. Didn't want to know because they had nice local, regional, current live relationships with, let's just call them national flag carriers. So they're missing the point that the European wrapper problem is real. If a platform provider, let's say Microsoft or OpenAI, decides to ship the same feature as you are relying on overnight, you lose your differentiation overnight. And in the US, you can see this happening at rapid speed. You can see acquihires, choke point acquisitions like OpenAI buying OpenClaw, Meta buying Maltbook. So OpenClaw for a rumored $1 billion, speculated numbers, and Maltbook for, again, speculative, alleged hundreds of billions. Who knows? This stuff happens lightning fast in the US. To date, this is not the game that we Europeans can play.
Yeah, and these characteristics just reinforce the fact that venture funding is polarizing between a comparatively rarefied AI space and everything else, of course, including good old SaaS application layers. High capital flows into and between foundational AI companies and infrastructure players like NVIDIA, OpenAI, and Anthropic, and so on, while the funding for applications is comparatively sparse or non-existent to date.
Yeah, seeing a lot of that in offered companies on the private market. It's ironic because during the SaaS dominant era, it was the application layer that captured most of the value, and infrastructure providers, they just had to feel like they were commodities. It's now the other way round. You've got a name for this, I think.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So we call this the great software switcheroo. So the question becomes, if SaaS categories are saturated and AI is controlled by a few foundational players, where do the next categories emerge?
Yeah, and again, I think some of that came out from the dinner that we hosted this week. But my guess is that AI native workflows will be the new application layer. Instead of embedding AI into existing SaaS tools, that's all that AI washing's sort of discredited. Disruptive new companies, and there could be a lot of them actually, will design and build brand new workflows around AI from the start.
Yeah, and this is paradigmatic shift, and that means there has to be a shift in thinking. And in this case, we think that the category shifts from something based on the idea of software tools, which we've been used to for decades, to something closer to digital co-workers.
Yeah, exactly. And not the sort of co-workers we see sort of lamely offered today. So instead of tools that help people in theory work faster, we're going to see systems that perform entire parts of their workday autonomously. So coding's the obvious one, then research analysis, even operational decision-making. And it's the operational decision-making where the humans are involved that is the crunch point.
The new challenge in category design is that you're no longer just selling software or even selling its benefits. You're asking companies to trust an AI with decisions about your business process.
Yeah, and that introduces, dare I say it, governance, mature themes like oversight, and of course, trust. And the real category battle here in EMEA might end up being who defines that operational layer that sort of governs or manages the AI systems, because that's a place where a lot of value can be added or subtracted and real category power can be exercised. One example which we helped launch in this space is a British company called Azoma. It's Agentic Commerce Protocol, AMP, which stands for Agentic Merchant Protocol, is a category definition, and it creates a new system of record. It's not a platform in the sense of an LLM, of an infrastructure platform. It's a layer with a real value to its ideal customer profiles, who, by the way, include customers like Mars, Perfect Ted, and several other well-known brands. It sits above Amazon and the other online shops and gives control back to the brands and the merchants who, let's face it, spend billions to create customer pull, only in some cases to hand over all of their creation, all of their creativity, all of their brand power to these massive hypermarkets, who then can promptly go ahead and advertise rival products against them. And that's why we've got the Azoma CEO, Max Sinclair, on a future episode, sharing some of the lessons about what this new type of category design involves.
So I think if we're to draw some lessons from this, is that the next category might not be dominated by the smartest, or, as has often happened in the past, not the smartest, but best distributed AI model.
Yeah, right. It might be the company that best defines how AI actually operates inside large organizations. And that could be the savior of some of the massive consulting organizations who are, and I'm thinking of PwC at the moment, who currently are beginning to and maybe aggressively reevaluate their top to bottom structure for service delivery.
Yeah, well, that might be good news for PwC, but it's also going to be, or could be, good news for the likes of Accenture, IBM Consulting, Deloitte, Capgemini, Cognizant, Tata, Infosys, Wipro, and of course their employees, but only if they can reskill fast enough.
Well, guys, in this increasingly volatile world, many of us are looking for digital sovereignty. And now, more than ever, our national health providers, those in the law and order community, governments and public sector organizations want more control over their communications.
They want a digitally sovereign solution which can never be interrupted based on external demands, no matter how powerful they are, and a service which means they are not reliant on a single vendor.
Opting for open standard software means a competitive vendor ecosystem and solutions which are designed to interoperate with other organizations' infrastructure.
This is where Matrix, the secure communications open standard, plays a vital role.
Most European governments already use Matrix-based solutions for communications, and Element is the leading provider of Matrix-based secure communication solutions. It's already working with the European Commission, NATO, the United Nations, and governments in France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, and many others.
Element provides sovereign, interoperable, and end-to-end communications. If you're responsible for a nation's trusted and resilient communications, take a look at the Matrix Open Standard and Element at element.io.
We've used Element ourselves and find it fast, secure, and so easy to adopt. If you want digital sovereignty, you have to check out Element. See our show notes for more information and get on board with the new secure world of communications today. All right, so today's lesson from tech history is 2 paradoxes and a law.
Well, everybody's been talking about agentic this and agentic that, a lot about what AI agents are going to do to knowledge work.
We're going to try and look back at work-related lessons from yesteryear and see if we can tackle some of the principles of work that seem spot on for today.
It all starts with a classic work of women's history, a book from Ruth Schwartz Cowan. Definitely worth reading. If you can get past its title, not terribly snappy. Its title is called More Work for Mother, The Ironies of Household Technology from the Open Hearth to the Microwave. It did win the 1984 Dexter Prize from the Society for the History of Technology, a very august body. And you know how much I love musing on the history of tech and what it can teach us. Now, in this case, what I particularly love is that it describes one of the most counterintuitive results in technology adoption. Labour-saving household appliances don't actually reduce labour, because we've spent most of our lives listening to a whole load of promises, and concerns about machines or machine adoption, eventually leading to the sunlit uplands of endless leisure for us humans.
It cannot be a coincidence that this paradox about labour-saving devices not saving labour is about domestic tasks. And the reason I say that is even the most highly inventive nations on earth, the Japanese and the Koreans, who have got aging populations and real concerns, can't find solutions for these sorts of problems.
Exactly. And this phenomenon, which we described with the very snappy title, is now thankfully known as the Cowan paradox. Now, to me, that cemented Ruth's place in tech history. I reckon, though, that it's pretty useful as a guide to predicting what AI agents will actually do to work.
Are you sure? I know you love this stuff, but just give me the TLDR, too long didn't read version, please.
All right. Okay. So take the vacuum cleaner or Hoover, if you want the boomer generic, or perhaps even now the hurrah for the UK, Dyson. Now, before electric vacuums existed, cleaning rugs, if you were flush enough to afford anything resembling a carpet, was a huge ordeal. Involved moving furniture, rolling up heavy lumps of textile, taking them outside, hanging them on a line, and literally beating the dust out of them with paddles, right?
That sounds good for your mental health, actually.
Probably good for your mental health, very good for your forearms, and cheaper than a gym membership. But if you think about it, it took multiple people to do this. And sort of because of that and other factors, it happened maybe once or twice a year. Now, of course, that's where the idea of spring cleaning eventually came from.
Right. So just cleaning, therefore, was infrequent because we're humans and it was inconvenient. It was exhausting. It was time consuming. It was effectively expensive in terms of labour.
Oh, getting all economic there.
Yeah. In economic terms, labour was comparatively cheap back then, though. Still quite knackering, though.
Then electric vacuums appeared in the early 20th century. This new category of technology, as is what happens when new technologies do burst on the scene, actually required the perfection of a number of innovations, from domestic electricity supply, smaller motors, new materials, and so on. But the point was, suddenly you could clean the rug, or increasingly the fixed carpet, actually installed because of the arrival of the Hoover, right where it was sitting. No lifting, no helpers.
And that's handy because given the time, post the Second World War, women were entering the workforce and I mean the non-domestic workforce, what we would call work. So logically, the time needed for housework had to be reduced. And here was a technology ready to deliver this very time-saving time that could be used like even more value-added tasks or even leisure.
Aha, but that's where you're wrong. It didn't. It absolutely did not. And that's actually mostly determined by three things that changed at the same time. What happened, because you got these handy Hoover, Dyson vacuum cleaner things, was that the frequency of use exploded, right? So once cleaning became easy, society changed. Social expectations shifted, right? So manufacturers, of course, drove demand for their product based on, the stuff you see coming out of P&G and Lever these days, scare tactics about germs, disease, and dirt. So instead of cleaning once or twice a year, and everybody did that, so that was fine, households were guilted into vacuuming weekly or even daily, right? So you're doing it more. So second, the actual labour got reassigned, right? So think about it. Beating rugs actually required physical strength. So, men or hard help often did it. Vacuuming, of course, seemed to be and actually was easier. So it got reclassified as light housework, which meant it became the wife's responsibility. How convenient for the patriarchy. Anyway, third thing that happened was that helpers disappeared. And this was, a product of post-First World War, where there weren't that many people around because they'd been killed somewhere in the mud in Europe. And middle-class households that used to employ domestic servants couldn't find them or found there was an alternative. So for that level of heavy cleaning, we now have an electric servant replace the human. And of course, if you think about it, the same thing happened with domestic laundry. You used to ship it out for somebody else to do, or the woman of the house would spend hours and hours on the tub working away, cleaning the clothes. But then what happened was laundrettes opened. So all the capital was put into putting communal machines in. And that became a sort of halfway house before everything got cheap enough and small enough. And we started to own our own laundry machines in the UK, certainly by the 80s.
There you go. The labour's disappeared.
It actually merely transferred the labour, but not the time taken, because the launderers, mostly housewives, needed to mind their washing and transfer it to dryers.
The Cowan paradox. There was relatively little time saving. All that happened was the format of the work just moved. And in fact, some of the tasks multiplied. I can see the argument you're making. In fact, I witnessed that just this week. Somebody was talking about SEO roles in a consumer packaged goods companies. And that work needs to be done. It's just less important and probably broken up into different tasks. So looking at keywords, endlessly updating HTML pages, this is not a job for humans. And thankfully with AI, the nature of this work is actually changing. This sort of shift changes the very meaning of quote unquote work and reduces the need for certain job roles in paid employment, just like it did in households.
Yeah, that also exemplifies how quickly labour shifts, because there was a point when endlessly updating HTML pages was a job for humans, just like doing the laundry, a job you really wouldn't want to do. The Cowan paradox basically says the time spent doing the work, however it evolves, basically does not change. So empirically, time use studies from the 30s through to the 50s showed that men were frankly really not doing their share of work then. The housewives were actually still spending about 51 hours a week on housework, basically unchanged before any appliances arrived.
Right. And that's the heart of the Cowan paradox. Labour-saving technology doesn't necessarily save labour. It resets expectations. You think that means we can expect to see more production of HTML pages and more human checking of the output, maybe?
And that could be a result. I mean, Cowan argued that the real effect of technologies is raising the standard of the output, right? And obviously that's a very subjective idea. But it certainly is true if you think about it. When something becomes cheaper or easier, society demands more of it, right? So Is that beginning to sound like the current AI debate?
Now for our second law, and this is one that many, many people are talking about in the age of AI, and it's the classic efficiency paradox described by William Stanley Jevons, who published the theory of political economy while he held the chair of political economy at, guess where, our alma mater, Manchester University. Hurrah!
Yes, and there's a whole building called the Jevons Building named after him. Anyway, the Jevons paradox. Right. Back in the 19th century, Jevons noticed that as a newfangled coal-fired engines became more efficient, total coal consumption actually increased. Efficiency lowered the cost per unit, which encouraged more use of those newfangled engines.
Same pattern again. Induced demand, added roads, and you just increase the traffic, improve fuel efficiency. And guess what? People drive more miles or choose bigger Chelsea tractors, as we call them here in the UK, SUVs, as our American friends call them. And they seem to have negated the theoretical overall reduction in fuel consumption due to more efficient engines, because they're massive lumps.
They're great big bricks which you're trying to throw through the air. So what this says is, sort of in quasi-economic terms, efficiency gains get absorbed by demand expansion and don't deliver reduced effort.
So your argument is that these AI agents that people are touting are basically the vacuum cleaner of knowledge work. Well, they certainly hoover up dull tasks like SEO, but should we not expect a life of leisure just yet?
Yeah, exactly. They'll make certain tasks dramatically easier, but it won't reduce work. It will increase the volume and expectations around knowledge output. Now, I think we're already seeing early evidence of that. And guess what? The academics are on it. The Harvard Business Review, a very august journal, which I'd recommend you all to read, recently published a study by Aruna Ranganathan and Jinki Maggie Yi. Massive apologies for the pronunciation, but we're mere Brits. Anyway, these two academic stars spent 8 months embedded in a 200-person tech company studying what actually happened when employees adopted AI tools.
Now, this is interesting. And let me guess, the result wasn't less work, was it? It sounds like, if it wasn't, that the AI in question was Microsoft Copilot. And don't get me started on that one.
Not commenting on the tech, given I spend most days working with somebody who appears to be half man, half Copilot. So yes, no work reduction. What they saw was 3 clear patterns. You have to think these things are all deeply rooted in human psychology, right? So what happened was that there was task expansion. Tasks expanded, and I'll explain this in a moment. Work boundaries started to disappear because of friction reduction in actually getting the stuff done. And there was an explosion in multitasking, presumably also driven by the idea that people felt they needed to do more with the AI to keep their basic jobs. So if you think about task expansion, what happened was that they observed that people didn't just do their own jobs faster, they started doing other people's jobs. Product managers, right? So this is what happens when you get vibe coding. Product managers began writing code. Researchers started handling engineering tasks. God, work that previously required hiring somebody new got absorbed by existing employees, right?
Right. So in a way, the AI agents here are like the old domestic servants. They're being replaced by, if you like, housewives, that's you and I, doing a lot more work.
Yeah, but it's also, to extend that analogy, it's also the housewives justifying their existence for want of not knowing what else to do. Right? So the second thing was that the work time boundaries disappeared. I mean, what is a work time boundary? Yeah. I've never had one in my life. So in this more apparently structured environment, the work time boundaries disappeared. And this was because apparently the AI tools sort of feel conversational, sort of humanish. So workers actually started using them constantly. Now, if you think it's irritating enough walking down the street with everybody staring at their phone and bumping into you, what started happening was that during lunch, in meetings, before leaving the office, it felt like everybody was just going, "Oh, one more quick prompt." And you know what happens there, because we've sort of been there. Suddenly it's like 9 p.m. and you're still working. I mean, to me that sounds just like the old days down the M4 corridor, which is, for those people not familiar with the UK, was the Silicon Valley of its time. You know, we used to be we'd be working away on presentations and stuff, and then, you know, we'd be wanting to go home, but then somebody would pipe up, there's one more thing we could put in tomorrow's presentation, and we'd feel duty bound to do it.
It was easier back then, though, because there were fewer speed cameras, but I digress. All right. So what we're saying about this work expansion and the task merging, etc., is the friction disappears. So that means the stopping point for work disappears. And I'm seeing that with AI. You just create more subtasks, especially as voice note usage increases, the amount of inputs increase. And that's part of the appeal, I guess, of the current appeal of OpenClaw, because it works 24/7, it works well with voice commands, and it often uses a dedicated server, so it doesn't get in the way of anything else, or a Mac Mini, while all the other work stays on your other devices. So it's actually more work via more channels. And guess what? There is a backlash, because OpenClaw is so autonomous, does so much coding, that proper techies are now calling it inefficient. They would prefer to see proper old school API calls, which means they can oversee them. But you know, they may not win the argument, because its defenders, OpenClaw defenders, say, well, it's cheap, it doesn't answer back, and we don't need you proper techies. The work has, in fact, not gone away. In fact, it's increased. But as you said in your previous two examples, the format has changed.
Yeah, and it's transferred. And, you know, that's classic Cowan paradox behavior. But the third pattern that our two academics found was the multitasking explosion, which we're already on a trajectory for. Come on, you know, we all dip in and out of applications. And
sorry, I was just on my phone.
Yeah, right. And, you know, are you salami slicing your time? Because that's sort of what happens. And in this case, in this world of AI, workers started turbocharging it, you know, running multiple AI agents simultaneously. And, you know, it's like scarcely believable. Guess what? Old projects were revived because AI could handle parts of them in the background. You know, stuff they thought had come to a dead end on. I'll just give it to AI. It'll work on it till it comes out with something.
That could create the feeling, or the illusion, if you will, of momentum and progress.
Yeah, right. But we all know what the reality is. And they confirmed this. It's cognitive overload, and you know the researchers ultimately concluded that AI increases the intensity of work. You know, multiple copies of communications on email, chat, and other channels, plus more checking, because there are so many channels and tasks being attempted.
This sounds like we need a new social contract, maybe, because AI doesn't contract the work, it actually amplifies it. You know, one could argue the productivity goes up, but so do expectations, maybe even faster. And clearly, once again, the time spent working does not reduce.
And as you would expect, because we're all about category, there is a tech category implication here. From a category perspective, I think we may be thinking about AI agents the wrong way.
Do tell, how so?
So everybody has assumed the primary value proposition for AI is labor reduction. And, you know, those are all the scare stories that are appearing in the media at the moment. But historically, that's almost never what so-called efficiency technologies actually deliver, even if people, and they still are choosing to believe otherwise.
Well, that's a bit of a shocker, because the real category that everyone's talking about, or seems to be talking about, is AI automation.
Yeah, right. But actually, it might be AI-driven output expansion. And that will be tools that let organizations attempt things that were previously impossible because the labor cost was just too high.
That sounds like a productivity win. And so if this is true, that it's all about AI-driven output expansion, the winners here won't be companies that reduce headcount, because, as we've seen, empirically, this just doesn't happen. And even if there appears to be a lot of attempts to boost share price by promising AI implementation, the work will not go down, right?
That link between AI implementation and headcount reduction, you know, does appear to be a fashion designed to boost share price. But we think that the winners will actually be the ones that enable companies to raise the ceiling of what their teams can produce, you know, to use the title of a great book, to think bigger, if you will. So this brings us to our third and final law.
And possibly the easiest one that everybody knows, right? If they don't know what it's called, they know it.
It's actually called Parkinson's law, where work expands to fill the time available, which clearly already applies here.
Yeah, absolutely. Work does expand to fill the time available. In other words, AI isn't the end of work, or even its reduction. The work's increasing, and what is classically seen as work, it drifts, its scope creeps, it starts to include nice to haves. It basically increases. In fact, we've both witnessed machine-aided busy work within AI. It's all too easy to disappear down that rabbit hole, doing something because you can, not because it's necessary. Now, is that all bad, or is that valid experimentation?
Well, we will see, but I think it's just the beginning of a much higher bar for our expectations of AI, at least for those that still have or aspire to have white-collar jobs.
Think there are too many lookalike tech companies chasing the same markets? We do. We think it's because so few tech startups are able to build and lead their own categories. What matters most is to be different. Stop following and start building your own unassailable leadership position today. Working with the category design gurus at Categorical brings decades of differentiation expertise to your team. Book a consultation from our website today, and we will send you our one-pager detailing how to start designing your own highly differentiated category.
For those of us who have been in tech for a long time, there's been one constant, and that is the appearance of advice from the world's biggest tech research outfit, Gartner. And we have noticed some things that have been said by them, but what really caught our eye is double your PR budget now, says Gartner. And we think this is all about a massive shift in how people think about knowledge. And this is about going from offer to discover.
This is a marketing strategy session, so you might need to listen and take a few notes. Get ready, especially for the 5 fast tactics that we're going to drop at the end. So yeah, you're right. It's clear that the nature of B2B marketing is changing. Customers are moving from accepting offers and into more of a discovering solutions proactively, and solutions to very specific issues, the likes of which they probably spent a lot of time researching before. They don't need to do that anymore. And the upshot for category designers and brand owners is the places that you need to show up have changed fundamentally.
Let us talk you through this in detail and explain why you need to take action now or risk losing your category. And the extraordinary thing about this is, for once, possibly the only time, possibly, we will be in violent agreement with the high priests of tech, the ancient druids at Gartner.
Here it is, the least likely possible headline of the year. Drumroll: LLMs will drive a 2x increase in PR and earned media budgets over the next 2 years, says Gartner.
Shock, horror. But unsurprisingly, given our joint background in category marketing communications and indeed tech PR, we agree with yes, we do agree. You heard that. Now, I'll just say it again. We do agree. We agree. We definitely agree with the sentiment expressed here by the, let's face it, they're very big, 11 billion market cap industry analysts at Gartner. But, given that market cap was nearly double what it was not so long ago, these are the guys that predicted IBM would beat Microsoft in the operating system wars and rather overestimated 3D printing. So we are a little cautious.
Indeed, we are. Still surprised about the agreement. How magnanimous of us. Yeah, so the reason that we're saying this, though, history aside, is this is not the same reaction as some very hard done by hardworking folks in PR who've been frothing at the mouth at this announcement. No. Guys and girls of PR, just because the AI is allegedly after your job does not mean We need to clutch at any straws. We got this, people.
Okay. Do you want to dig into this a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so Gartner's output from their CCO event had 3 predictions. And a prediction 1, again, just read it out again because it's so good. By 2027, mass adoption of public LLMs as a replacement for traditional search, that bit's important, as a replacement for traditional search, will drive a 2x increase in PR and earned media budgets.
Oh, that is good. Oh, that is good.
Whoa.
How many times increase in PR budgets, Paul?
2x.
Oh, hit me one more time.
300%. It's a lot.
So what were the sort of key findings then that justified this outrageously good headline?
Well, they're talking about the highest likelihoods of things that CCOs or chief comms officers would invest in. And they're talking about how AI-powered chatbots like ChatGPT, which they said was up 608% as a source of inquiries, and Perplexity, which, a mere 262%, but we like Perplexity. And they'd experienced exponential year-over-year traffic increases. Meanwhile, according to Gartner, traditional search engines were down, a few percentage points, both Google and Bing. So they're using data, which we love, and it seems to be a little bit AI driven, wouldn't you say?
Well, this is all very, very, very jolly good. But as this is the AI era, I think our listeners demand a little context. Listen up. So advertising, latterly online advertising, has ruled the roost for decades, right? We all know that. In fact, in any other world, that reality would have been an issue for some form of monopolies commission, right? Right. So if you think about it, if you think about global search engine share across all devices, Google has hoovered up close to 90% worldwide since at least 2015, right? So some later data, Statista and StatCounter, I think, they showed roughly 89 to 93% share across 2015 to 25. But hey, good times are coming. The arrival of AI has changed the emphasis from vendor offer to customer discovery. Now, let me say that again. The arrival of AI has changed the emphasis from vendor offer to customer discovery. The customer, through AI, can specify exactly what they want from any vendor or any product to a very granular level, depending on the prompt. This changes the game.
I love it, because the cliche is the customer is king, but the reality is Google's online auctions for ads, that was the king. And the rest of us were all peasants. So now last week, interestingly enough, we attended a special launch of a new product around AI visibility. More of that later. Remember the name Azoma. And at that event, we watched an executive from, a true B2C category leader. This is Loop. These are the noise cancelling earplugs that are all the rage for concerts and for sleep.
Amongst young people in particular.
You tell that to my other half, I'm sure she'll be delighted you said that. So once upon a time, this very erudite head of marketing mentioned it was all about impressions. Frankly, that's how he and everybody in the marketing industry was measured. And we literally mean impressions from search ads. And then if they go down, there's a simple solution. You just reach for the wallet or speak to the CFO, and because they've gone down, because they're not effective, you go and spend more money with Meta or Google, right? No longer. So Matt said, in his case, and bear in mind his product is a high consideration, durable good, which you buy once or twice, every few years. He said that when their impressions went down, that was actually a good thing, which is sort of counterintuitive based on the old way of working. Because if the impressions were going down and conversions were simultaneously going up, that was great. That meant people coming in, buying products and moving on. Now, slight issue in that he's always got to find a new set of customers. But isn't that counterintuitive?
Yeah. So why was that then?
Well, simply because customers were showing up at the point of purchase with their credit cards in their hands. And this is, I think, it's a mid-sized 50 to £100 purchase. People were showing up much more informed. They knew if they why they needed it, they were ready to buy. But here's the real question. Where was that information coming from? And you may be surprised.
Oh, yes. The issue is that AI answer engines cite earned media above all other sources. And it really doesn't matter what the LLM is, ChatGPT or Google Gemini or anything else. It's all about earned media. And that would be about 40%, according to Azoma on ChatGPT, and 34% on Google Gemini.
Yes. So like this is a massive turnaround, as you say. Depending on ChatGPT, 40% earned media, Google Gemini, 34% earned media, but also you have to add to that 12% of UGC YouTube, which OpenAI, because they don't own YouTube, unlike Google, don't count for sources. The amount, and this is where Gartner's right, the amount of citations. That is those are the superscripts that inform the answers that the AI engines or AI answer engines, depending where we end up on that category, are citing. That's coming from earned media. It's bigger than any other source.
Before we get too excited, perhaps we should go back to the source of this double your PR budget strategy, back to the one it quotes at Gartner.
Okay, you want me to be nasty? I'll do it. Okay.
No.
I find it ironic.
So Gartner wants now to be nice to PR. Please respect that.
No. That's rich, because for years, Gartner's been stealing a living from those hard-bitten P2B tech marketing folks. They were consuming budgets, flying off execs to Gartner symposiums in
Barca, Vegas, London.
Yeah. So then you've got your execs out.
That's not a euphemism, folks.
Yeah, the expenses for all of that, hotels and meals, right, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of marketing budget just flying off to Gartner. They would also, and this sort of hurts us as category folks, they would dictate your positioning, and often create what I would see as useless gobbledygook for insiders, magic quadrants. So, they'd also, and these very same magic quadrants would take up time as perfectly good customer references, which could, be used as videos on your website, which are favors you may want to ask to get, press releases. These favors would be distracting for the sales guys who would, with justification say, no, I'll do it for Gartner, but I won't do it for other marketing things. So that's another bone to pick with Gartner. Also, given Gartner's massive influence, they distract product marketing talent. They would spend their entire time getting the message right, not for the market, but for the Gartner analysts. And sometimes they'd even think doing real work, i.e. making their propositions useful for customers, was a little bit below them.
What I always used to love was they basically started to demand. They wouldn't talk to normal people. They had to talk to special analyst relations teams, and again, once again, you're diverting budgets to, frankly, a bunch of one-trick ponies who did a similar but far less measurable role to PR. Sort of, the emperor's got new clothes. Everybody felt they should exist, but nobody could really work out why. And I'm sure this and the things you've cited there, Paul, are all true. And frankly, who doesn't like a little bit of hubris? I hear you on this. But here, Gartner has been genuinely helpful.
I know, right?
Steady on. I'm going to have to put a bucket of water over you at this rate. This prediction is all about a massive change in how to attract customers to your category and to constantly encourage them to find out more about your product before taking that all-important purchasing decision.
And if I may, that is more important in B2B tech, where you've got sophisticated, somewhat complicated products than if you're selling milk, for instance.
This is a move for an emphasis not just on the offer, to a focus on discovering the offer. And that is a fundamental shift.
One would think that a lot of exec time should be figuring out how the discovery process works these days. And it means brands and vendors need a very tight control on how and where they are discovered. It might even mean a new category for IT analysts like Gartner, but enough of that. What do we conclude from this, Jonathan?
Right. Well, we conclude that we're very excited. And the reason we're very excited is power has shifted from the producer to the consumer, in this case, decisively. So people who are trying to sell stuff need to think more carefully than ever how their potential buyers will assemble the information about your category and, of course, your offers within the category, right? So you have to think, what will the pain points they suffer mean that they are looking for?
Because they're going to be the prompts, right? Like you say, it's rather like category design.
So rather than just considering which features might appeal most to the audience, think about how your proposition can be seeded into those channels which are likely to form the discovery journey of a powerful AI-powered customer.
And we said at the start, and we want to deliver here, that we'd have some 5 very tactical pieces of advice for you. So let's rattle through these. Okay, so number 1, today, review and possibly defer your ad spending, because you don't know if it's affecting sales. And maybe a good way to do this would be to use AI to determine what the effect of your ad spends are.
Secondly, audit your AI citations to find out where you're showing up. Use a tool like Azoma or Peak to track this against your hopefully clear or, most definitely soon much more tightly defined ICPs. And of course, that is an acronym for Ideal Customer Profiles, the people that you really, really want to sell to.
At 3, continue to tighten up both your ICP definitions and, importantly, the definitions of their pain points. Bear in mind, the average AI prompt these days has 26 words, as opposed to maybe 3 or 4 for the ad searches that they're replacing.
So at 4, you really do need to pay close attention to the shifting sands of AI visibility. Are your blog readers engaging more or less? How many earned articles did your PR create? Is Wikipedia losing to Grokkipedia this month?
Finally, and number 5, please remember, this is all brand new. It's exciting and new. And the relative stabilities of years of just throwing money at ad search, at the ad search hegemony, is all over. This is the time when marketing people and PRs can make the most amount of difference to category creators and category creation. Take back control of your PR, as Gartner says, not just us. And should we say, learn to love AI visibility, sisters and brothers. Please hit us up if this is of interest. We'd love to help you think it through.
Thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about category design, head to becategorical.com. If you need help designing and dominating your category, then get in touch. Contact details are in the show notes. Think there are too many lookalike tech companies chasing the same markets? We do. We think it's because so few tech startups are able to build and lead their own categories. What matters most is to be different. Stop following and start building your own unassailable leadership position today. Working with the category design gurus at Categorical brings decades of differentiation expertise to your team. Book a consultation from our website today and we will send you our one-pager detailing how to start designing your own highly differentiated category.
Well, guys, in this increasingly volatile world, many of us are looking for digital sovereignty. And now, more than ever, our national health providers, those in the law and order community, governments and public sector organisations want more control over their communications.
They want a digitally sovereign solution which can never be interrupted based on external demands, no matter how powerful they are, and a service which means they are not reliant on a single vendor.
Opting for open standard software means a competitive vendor ecosystem and solutions which are designed to interoperate with other organizations' infrastructure.
This is where Matrix, the secure communications open standard, plays a vital role.
Most European governments already use Matrix-based solutions for communications, and Element is the leading provider of matrix-based secure communication solutions. It's already working with the European Commission, NATO, the United Nations, and governments in France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, and many others.
Element provides sovereign, interoperable, and end-to-end communications. If you're responsible for a nation's trusted and resilient communications, take a look at the Matrix Open Standard and Element at element.io.
We've used Element ourselves and find it fast, secure, and so easy to adopt. If you want digital sovereignty, you have to check out Element. See our show notes for more information and get on board with the new secure world of communications today.